Sorry, YouTube, that it's been a while, but we are finally back with another class guide for Lord of the Rings Online. And today we're going to be talking about the Lore Master. So, a quick disclaimer, as I haven't really fully messed around with blue and yellow, I've mostly been focused on red. However, I can still give a bit of insight and what to expect. Also, on top of that, blue and yellow, though they have their uses, they're not super necessary right now, at least in the legendary servers. We're about, currently, as of recording this, we are about a month or so away from Moria. And even in Moria, there'll be some use for yellow, but again, you'll probably mostly just be going red because of just the massive damage output. It isn't until we start reaching maybe Mirkwood or Rohan, even maybe a bit in Isengard, where we start getting those higher tier raids and dungeons, that's where yellow starts to see a little bit more use, and there's more gear variety. So I'll break down yellow here to start, and then I'll move into blue, and then I'll go more in depth about everything into red, as that is the most popular spec. So when you're looking at the yellow trait tree, there's a couple ways to look at it. Are you going to be focusing on dungeons, or are you going to be focusing on raids? Because if you're focusing on dungeons, or maybe even a raid fight that has a lot of ads and requires a lot of CC on everything, you're going to be looking at stuff like Grasping Earth, and kind of moving down almost this entire left side of the tree. So, because you want your Cracked Earth to root things, then you want, of course, you're going to want Blinding Flash, and then you're going to want the extended duration of Blinding Flash and the reduced cooldown, so that you can permanently keep one enemy flashed, dazed, stunned, mezzed, however you want to phrase it. And you can almost, I think with all of this fully used, I think you can actually almost keep two enemies permanently dazed. So in a raid scenario or a single target scenario, that's not going to be extremely useful. For example, the Balrog fight in the Rift, even all of the Rift fights, you really just want to kill everything because everything's going to fall over, and you don't need anything stunned in a corner. So that's not super useful. Same with Firm Grasp, our extra that benefits off of Herb Lore, right? It makes the roots harder to break out of. Again, you're not going to need that kind of stuff. But in a dungeon scenario, an instance scenario, this would see a little bit more use. But for a raid scenario, mostly, you're going to want to go a little bit different in the tree. So no matter what you're doing, you're always going to want Force of Will because it increases the debuff duration. And then this is kind of where you start kind of figuring out your goal in the raid or your role. Where do you want to be more CC focused? Because then you have Bane Flare, which, fun fact, for those that are new to the game, Bane Flare used to only work on undead, such as, all the skeletons in the Barrow Downs, for example, because Blinding Flash did not work on them. So you had to use Bane Flare on them. So just a fun little fact there. But now Bane Flare just works on everything. So are you going to be more CC focused, or are you going to be kind of more of a supportive role focused that also does debuffs? So in a raid scenario, you're mostly going to be looking at being a supportive role and less of the CC role. So you're going to do some outgoing healing. You're going to want Share the Power. You're going to obviously want more debuffs, because Wind Lore is really good for incoming damage. Sign of Power is the stun immunity that tanks will want for a lot of scenarios, both in dungeons and in raids. So I feel like this is just a must take. So when we've reached this part, like, okay, what do we want to do? We could make some healing and stuff stronger, Shield of Knowledge potency, right? And then we have access to Pleasant Breeze, so now we have a little bit more healing. I think, or is this for... Oh no, yeah, more healing, and then an extra healing ability with Beacon of Hope. Stun duration, so anything that requires a stun will stun longer, such as Test of Will, which stuns for 5 seconds at a base level. It will now stun for over 7 seconds, so that's really good. But again, in something like the Rift, not incredibly useful. You're not, because it doesn't matter, because you're not going to be stunning anything. So maybe we go back up to Shield of Knowledge, and then we can kind of reach out the bottom of the tree where this is just a good skill to have, because it just affects so many different things. It's incredibly overwhelming, but basically it's going to buff certain skills to make them either increase damage, make them AoE, have double the effects of certain debuffs, etc. It's just a good skill to have. And this, what does this one do again? Oh, right. Ancient Craft, which is this skill. It just doubles the effect. So this is a must-have. This is just an amazing skill to have. This is basically a Lore Master's version of Oathbreakers, kind of in a way. So at this point, we kind of have our 3 points remaining. So I would still recommend taking Blinding Flash regardless, because you never know if it'll be useful. This gives us 2 more points remaining. So you could finish this off. You could give Grasping Earth. It's longer root duration, but then of course it's reducing your damage. You could get Bane Flare so that you have more CC options. Because we have the 2 points, you could just start maybe you want to buff your tactical damage, buff your pets in some way, right? Because we can always expand into other trees. There's nothing necessarily really bad in the yellow tree for Lore Master. It's more very situational based of raid versus dungeon. And eventually we'll get to the point on the legendary servers where you can fill this entire tree, and if you just wanted to make it simple for yourself, you could fill the entire tree, not worry about switching it for raid focus or dungeon focus, because even eventually too, raids will have more CC requirements anyways, so you're going to kind of want to fill out the majority of it anyways. So this is kind of what the tree would look like. For the sake of it, we'll just finish this off, Shield Potency, and we'll do Bane Flare just for the sake of the video. Now, again, because these are, if you're on the legendary servers, gearing is really weird at this stage for all the different specs, because yellow Lore Masters don't do damage. They're not meant to do damage. That's not their design. They're meant to debuff. So what you really need is finesse. So wit will be a must-have. However, in the early stages of the game, there isn't a lot of ways to earn finesse. For example, if I was to look at the Karn Doom gear or Uragarth gear, or Angmar gear, none of it has finesse. If I look at the gear that I have equipped, which is I have the full raid set. Rift set, sorry. None of it has finesse. Jewelry doesn't have finesse. So that's why I'm saying that the yellow Lore Master it's not at its peak yet, and it's going to be restricted by the gear just because of the nature of the game and how it grew over time. But in terms of stats, when we eventually get to the point where Yellow Lore Master is going to see more value, you will want Wit because it's your highest. It's the one virtue that gives you the most amount of finesse, because you need finesse. From there, you obviously want your mitigations maxed out. So honor, fortitude, tolerance, etc. You're going to want your tactical and physical mitigations maxed out just like you would any other build or any other class. From there, it's purely just vitality. You want as much vitality as possible. You're not doing damage. You have enough finesse now. I think it's by default. You want 30%. Your finesse rating should be at 30%. For tier 3 or higher content, I believe that's the amount you want, is 30%. Value the amount of actual finesse that is at the different levels, I don't actually know. And again, because of the earlier expansions of the game, it's going to be harder to reach. But for like tier 3 or higher, is 30%, I believe. So once you reach that 30%, so to speak, then you just pump everything into vitality, everything into morale, because you're not doing damage. That's not your role, and your skills are going to do very little. You just want to live and have a large morale pool, have a large power pool, so that you can actually use your abilities, because a lot of your abilities even cost morale in some cases. So the more morale you have, the less you are at risk of dying. And the more power you have, of course, then the more you can share your power with allies and such. So yeah, that's probably it for for Yellow. When Moria comes out, I will kind of be doing an update where we will be going over kind of the legendary items, but we won't be doing that until Moria. So now let's talk about blue. I know this is labeled as red, but I haven't actually put any points into anything yet because I was going to showcase blue. So blue is really good for solo scenarios. Like, it's okay to level with. It's not terrible. I prefer red because I'd rather just blow things up and move on. But blue, gives you a lot of survivability, because you have interesting things where you can summon your pets more frequently, and then you buff your pets, and then when your pets do something, or something happens to you, upon receiving a critical hit, your pet will sacrifice 5% of its health to heal you. Whenever something dies, your pet heals and it increases damage. You can sacrifice your pet to kind of save you, kind of thing. There's all these, when your pet crits, you crit, etc. So there's all these different weird interactions between you and your pet that just allows you to survive. You get an extra heal and debuff removal. It's also, though, blue is really good in the Moors, funny enough, because of one ability, and it's actually because of a Murder of Crows, which is a great skill. And this is why it would probably see raid use, because it's just another version of, I guess Ancient Craft isn't in here, of Ancient Craft, though. So Ancient Craft removes enemies' mitigations, where Murder of Crows just increases their incoming damage. So this is just another version of essentially Oathbreakers, which, if I remember right, yes, this effect does not stack with other potent incoming damage effects. So you can't have Oathbreakers and Murder of Crows on the same target. And I think there's actually a bit of a cooldown between the two. Like, I don't think you can chain them. I think there's like a 5 to 10 second like grace period in between the two. I think. I could be wrong. They may have changed that. But that's why Ancient Craft is a little bit better, because it doesn't actually require... It doesn't do incoming damage increases. It just removes mitigations. So that's why people prefer the yellow line stuff over blue line in terms of a raid scenario. In the Moors, Murder of Crows is really funny to use, and like I said, it's just like an Oathbreaker, so you can blow up creeps very, very quickly because of the incoming damage. And because there's so much natural survivability, and you have stuff like your Eagle, so that your skill inductions can't be set back while taking damage. You have crazy range damage with your Bog Lurker, melee damage from the Lynx and Sabretooth. You can make your pets super tanky, etc. There's a lot of survivability that just works well with the Moors and in solo scenarios. In terms of what this build actually is, because I haven't fully messed around with it, it was kind of hard to tell. Essentially, as you're leveling, you're going to want After Battle Treat, you might want Catmint, and Loyalty might be pretty good, especially on Legendary servers when you're on higher landscape difficulty and fighting Wraiths that spawn. Otherwise, this is generally what you're going to want. Eventually leading to, you'll want to finish off Hearty Diet, and you're going to want to finish off Survival Instinct. It just makes your pets take less damage and gives them more morale. If you're focused on Bear and you're truly only leveling, you don't need Bog Guardian, you don't need Eagle, and you don't need Lynx. So you could put three of those points right here into Survival Instinct, because you're just going to be focused on your Bear, and this really buffs your Bear. Especially when you combine it with Hearty Diet. They're actually here. You know what? Why don't I just showcase it so that you can see at current level cap of level 50 what your Bear's health can be. So let's just max it out for the sake of maxing it out. Pet damage. Pet damage again. Pet summoning. Pet health again. Bubble magnitude. Wizard sigil damage. Yeah, we've got that. Absorb things. All right, and then we'd want this and maybe Catmint. Sure, why not? Be a pretty generic leveling build. But so now when I summon the Bear, basically 2.4k morale, and we're at 3k morale. Like, that's not bad, right? That's a lot of pet health and a lot of health for yourself as well. So that's kind of something that you're looking at. In terms of gear yourself as a blue lore master like you would red. Tactical mastery, crit rating, mitigations, vitality, specifically in that order. Your virtues would be the same from red to blue. Once you max out your mastery and stuff like that, then you're just going to start focusing on mitigations and morale. Because again, in the earlier stages of the game, mastery is so easy to reach the cap on. I don't remember the exact number. Actually, my numbers are going to be off because I'm geared specifically for red. But I think its tactical offense rating would be at like 200%. So I'm just kind of off. So I could mess around with a couple traits, but it's really easy to hit mastery cap. All right. So now let's talk about red. I guess, sorry, before we move on to red, gearing, just because our options are limited, you're going to want the same gear. You're going to want Angmar gear, you're going to want Rift gear, and there's actually someone in my comments in another video mentioned a good set of gear as just something to level with, and this will be really helpful in Moria when it comes out in a month, is there's vendors in Rivendell that give you a set of gear. I'll showcase them at the end, just to show you where they are. But it's not a great, amazing tier set bonus, but the gear itself is fine and it's easy to get once skirmishes come out. All right, so now let's talk about red. There's two ways to go about this, but first off, you want tactical damage. That's a must-have. You want fire damage. That's a must-have. You want lightning type damage. That's a must-have. This is where things get a little bit different. So, if you're soloing and you're maybe at a higher landscape difficulty and you're going to try to focus on doing kind of one enemy at a time and fighting wraiths, Storm Staff and like fend them off is really good. It's really good single target damage, which you could then transition into a raid scenario, such as the Balrog or a majority of the fights in the Rift, where there's just the one enemy. You're going to be grouped up with your allies, and you're going to be in melee range. This works really well. Personally, for me, even when leveling, I just like pulling everything and just blowing everything up and standing at range. So I prefer going down Lightning Storm, buffing cracked earth damage, and I'll explain why as we get when I talk a little bit about skill rotation a bit. And then, oh yeah, so then you want slow burn, and because we need to go down to the next part of the tree, I like putting points into Fierce Lightning, getting Dry Kindling to increase the damage that Burning Embers does by, it can basically tears up, Ring of Fire, an amazing skill, and Nature's Fury. So this is kind of what your skill tree would look like at the like in around level 40, and now you're going to have 4 points remaining, and you're going to try to figure out what you want to do. Are you going to be in melee a lot? This is where you do the storm and staff stuff, go into fend them off, and then eventually with Moria, you would go into unyielding sweep. The reason why this is kind of interesting is when we use Call to Links spams flanks, basically. When you're playing the Lore Master, you hear like this little like ringing sound or dinging sound. Ring, ding, ding. That means that the flank has been applied to a target. And that's where Staff Strike does 100% more damage on flanks. Or if a target has been flanked, Staff Strike does so much more damage. So in a single target scenario, this is really good. But if you're not in melee, this is useless. So there are some scenarios in Rift where you're not in melee, but there's some scenarios in the Rift where you are in melee. So you could switch it around if you wanted to. It's not that big of a deal. But eventually, once we have the skill points, you're essentially going to fill out the tree regardless. You are going to get to that point. It's just right now, it's more of a situational thing. For me personally, this is what I like doing. Because Ring of Fire does so much damage, I take it. I max it out. It's really good. It does tons of damage. Fierce Lightning, I don't like 40%. 40% trigger chance is, for me, it's not high enough to see enough benefit. So I like making it 60%. Then we're at least over 50%, and it's pretty decent. Then, with your last point, you're kind of looking at it as, okay, we could max out cracked earth damage, which an extra 10% is actually a decent amount. Or we go from the 60% to the 80%. When Moria comes out, I believe we get 3, maybe 4 extra skill points. When Moria comes out, you're going to max both of these out. So it's not going to matter in a month. I personally put the point into Cracked Earth, and here's why. It's because of Ents Go to War. If your target has recently been shaken by Cracked Earth, this skill does bonus damage. So because you're going to be using Cracked Earth to buff the damage of Ents Go to War, why not just buff the damage of Cracked Earth? That's my thinking behind it. It makes sense to me, and it's going to be maxed out anyways in the future with Moria, because once Moria comes out, this will be maxed out, and you could probably just leave it at 80%, honestly. So we could put 1 point into here, then we could put the point into Storm and Staff, and then I think we get 1 more point. So that's where you could put it into Fend Them Off, or if we get a second point, or I guess technically a 4th point, then you would put the last one into rank 2 here. And that's kind of what I would do. In a dungeon scenario where there's lots of AoE, you start looking at Gust of Wind, spreads Burning Embers, and that's really helpful. But this is going to kind of be the majority of your build. So now, oh, you know what? Before we get to rotation, let me talk about stats quickly. Once again, mastery, crit rating, into mitigations and morale or vitality or vitality, not fidelity, but vitality. You want fidelity. But vitality, that is what that's what you're gonna go with. Max out your damage, get your tactical mastery up as high as possible. I do believe actually what I have is when I'm buffed by a captain and we have scrolls and stuff like that, this is at mastery cap. I think that's how I have it set up. Yeah, so that's what it's just gonna your classic mastery, crit rating, then mits, then health and morale. That's gonna be your setup. Best gear is going to be Rift gear right now. When Moria comes out, it's going to be, first it'll be like the Hope gear from Grand Stair, 16th Hall, the Watcher, etc. And then you move into the Dar Narglebug. DN gear will be your next best set. And once Moria comes out, I'll talk about the legendary items. This is basically currently in the legendary servers at the level 50 cap. This is essentially the best in slot gear you can get. I'm in the Rift gear, Rift armor. There might be a better sword, but this crafted sword is pretty much as good as you're gonna get. This is just the crafted brooch, and it's the best you can get. I've got lucky and have Wigfeld, subtle flux there. Just flex off the Wigfeld. There's a good cloak in Aragian that's, I think it comes from here. I think it's called the Lynx cloak. It's really good. It's honestly a really good cloak for tactical classes. And then there's some good cloaks from the book. Honestly, the crafted jewelry is the best you're gonna get. There isn't really a whole lot better. There's a couple of like rare drops, like I think it's Wisdan's ring that drops from Barad Gularin. There's maybe a random pocket item that could be better from a certain dungeon or quest. I like this. I like the Lore Master's badge, honestly, just because of how much morale it gives. And it gives a little extra finesse where you don't, as we mentioned earlier, you're not going to get finesse for much other stuff. And the morale is really what I take it for, because I really tried to reach when I'm buffed, I do hit over 3k morale, which is just nice as a red Lore Master. That's really good. It's easy to hit in blue, but as red, that's really good. I just remembered I said I was going to showcase a different set of gear that's really good, actually, for leveling. once Moria comes out with skirmishes. So let's go do that quickly. Not a full redo of this video in Moria, but what we'll do is we'll just focus on the next like best in slot gear. We'll refresh on where to put your next couple points, and then but the main focus will be the legendary items and on what legacies to get, what's really good, what's better than others, what stuff can you ignore, how you should kind of build your weapon, stuff like that. So yeah, in Rivendell, the last homely house, this is where you talk to Elrond a bajillion times for book stuff. Frodo and Gandalf are in here. The legendary stuff, there's a room up here, right? The word hoard, that's where all the legendary stuff is. So when Moria comes up, you'll go up there. There's these NPCs here that I actually totally forgot about, but there's one for every class. Brawler, Beorning, Hunter, Guardian, Lore Master, Runekeeper. I don't know where the other ones are, but these are the ones that are here. Oh, there's a Minstrel one. That's nice. I'm sure the others are around. Anyways, this used to be the old Helagrod set, which came out before the Rift. You buy it with skirmish marks and medallions and all that fun stuff. So, with skirmishes not being out currently, the earning the marks and the medallions is basically just Helagrod farms. But once Moria comes out, this will be a lot easier to farm, and it's decent gear to kind of level through Moria with if you wanted. You hit 50, you could buy this gear, and now you have a decent set to use throughout Moria if you didn't happen to do the Rift and all that stuff. Like, it's decent gear. Slightly different stats if you're looking for something a bit more specific. Looks like this pair of boots has finesse, so for yellow LMs, there you go. It's just its set bonus is not that great. Sure, the 9 will is fine, but the Bane Flare duration is not necessary. It's not really needed when compared to other set bonuses and other gear. But it is here, and I mean, I don't know, does it show us? Oh, so you can... Smoldering Wrath damage for Runekeeper? That's amazing. So this set is really good for Runekeeper. This set for Lore Master, not great. But yeah, someone brought it up, and I totally forgot it existed. So thank you to those that brought it up. There's Champion Warden. I don't know, maybe Mariner and Burglar are up here? I don't know. But yeah, so there's this extra set of gear that I forgot existed. And it's easy to forget, but it is here. So if you wanted some more gearing options, this is where it is. And there's Captain. Oh, that's Minstrel, so Mariner was here. I guess the only one that's not here is Burglar. That's kind of funny. Burglar's hiding somewhere. Classic Burglar. But yeah, thank you for watching. I appreciate it. The next videos, I can still do Hunter and Runekeeper that I'll try to get out before Moria, but I also may just wait for Moria to come out to do those so that we can kind of do everything together with the legendary items and stuff. But I will also be doing a whatchamacallit, a legendary items guide for just like an overall guide once Moria comes out. What to do to get them, how you should go about farming for them, and the generic way to build your weapons, what you should be looking for, how leveling them up works, all that good stuff. I will be doing that, but I'm saving that for when Moria comes out. Because I can't access the room, so I can't really showcase it. So I'll try to get that video out as soon as possible when Moria comes out, so that you can hopefully use that video to help as you level up in Moria. But yeah, thanks for watching again, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye!